Well, greetings and salutations, everybody, and welcome to the best damn movie-related show on the planet, right here from the studios in Burbank, California. We're so happy you can make us a part of your day. How was that? Was that good?
That was awesome.
I feel like I messed up the middle bit, like the studio in Burbank. That doesn't sound as smooth as when he does it.
We're off to a great start, right?
I think this is our best start yet. What are you talking about?
Smooth sailing from here.
There might be a bit of a confusion because people might have thought that they stumbled across an episode of Collider Movie Talk. But in fact, ladies and gentlemen, you are listening to the Schmoeville podcast. I'm Ryan Snelling, and I'm not sure if I'm supposed to intro you, so do whatever you want.
Well, I'm Brian Davids, and I want to quickly say it's Giacchino, not Giacchino, Mochaccino, Frappuccino. Let's give the heir apparent to John Williams the respect he earned over a decade ago. Remember, Giacchino.
Michael Giacchino.
Giacchino.
Michael Giacchino.
It's not Giacchino, it's Giacchino.
Are you on a last name basis with this person? Do you know him personally?
Yes, I am. He scored my 21st birthday party, so...
Don't even get me started, okay? I'm a massive Lost, Bad Robot fan. I know everyone involved in that sort of family in that realm, and I'm going to contest that.
I bet you $500 right now.
I'm going to message him on Instagram right now and see if he can type out the phonetics of how you pronounce his last name.
Do you really think I'd come on here without this information being vetted carefully, Snelling?
Anyway, hey, welcome to the Schmoeville podcast. We are so happy you are here. Quick thank yous to everyone who was so nice to us in the comments section on YouTube last week when we had that big double episode with JTE. That was a lot of fun. And you know, the week that we had JTE on, he wasn't as present because he was sick and he wasn't involved in a Schmoedown or anything. But I'm glad we had him on before this week because we have plenty of stuff to talk about with JT this week. But yeah, I loved everybody's response and had a good time talking to everybody about that episode and everything this past week. What about you?
I just want to remind everyone that we are the best damn Schmoes Know and Collider after show on the planet Earth.
There is a ton to talk about, which is hilarious because I was hoping for a shorter episode this week because last week's was so jam-packed. I don't know if we're going to get that because, I mean, looking at this outline here, I mean, there's so much going on, starting with the stuff with Collider.
I want to address one issue from last week. Just to clarify, I have heard Mark Ellis' stand-up on YouTube. I just haven't seen him live. So some people were like, how have you been a fan for so long, but you haven't watched Ellis' stand-up? So just wanted to clarify that.
Did you listen to Get to the Castle?
I did not. I did buy it, though. I did buy it.
Anyway, so are you ready to talk about movie talk?
Of course.
What do you got with movie talk this week, Brian?
Well, first off, let's look at the hosting situation because we like doing things like that on this show. We had Ashley all the way through Thursday and Sinead on Friday. So once again, Natasha did not host movie talk this week, second week in a row. I think it's safe to say that she has been placed in Collider News for the time being, perhaps indefinitely. So what do you think of this arrangement?
Well, I mean, we briefly talked about it last week, and then the week before that, we knew that Campia was planning on making some kind of adjustments in the upcoming week. It just seems like he did it faster than expected. But I mean, I totally get it. I don't watch Collider News. I'm glad that, you know, he didn't just fire her because he was the guy that hired her and brought her into this world. I think it's the right fit. I think when I watch movie talk, I like seeing Mova. I like seeing Sinead. They can contribute to the conversation a little bit more. And I think Natasha's aura works best for the news. So, I mean, again, I guess I'm not the right person to ask because it doesn't affect me who does the news or not. But I think, personally, it works to a T. So
yeah, we've addressed this. We've addressed this enough by now. Can I pick another bone with Josh McCougar right now?
You know, we talk throughout the week, guys. Me and Brian, we talk about what we're going to include in this show. And I had a sense that we were going into this with Brian just full of angst from Makuga. I think I can personally save it until the Schmoedown protest portion. Do you need to let it out in spurts throughout so you don't explode?
Well, there's stuff throughout all of the programming, not just the Schmoes Know or Schmoedown programming. So let me just quickly state, Ellis lost a bet to Makuga. The Steelers beat the Redskins on Monday Night Football. Tuesday Movie Talk, Ellis had to wear Makuga's Steeler jersey. However, Makuga could not let the bet just be the only form of payment. He had to interrupt the show, start twerking, and then flex on camera. So I just don't understand what compels Makuga to A, interrupt the show, B, twerk, and C, flex. If you're going to twerk, just twerk. You don't have to add the flex. You don't have to go for two things back to back. Interrupt, twerk, and be on your way. You don't need to add the flex. The flex is too much.
So are you just saying you don't have a problem with him interrupting and kind of picking at Ellis? You have a problem because
No, I have a problem with him interrupting.
Oh, really?
I definitely have a problem with him interrupting.
I thought you were calling him out for being a little douchey while doing it.
Look, Ellis lost the bet. He was paying the bet by wearing the jersey. He did not need Makuga to come on the show and rub it in even more. Furthermore, the audience did not need Josh to interrupt the show with twerking and with flexing. And if you're going to do those things, just do twerking or just do the flex. That's it.
I think you need to pick your battles with Makuga because I think that this was just a little all in good fun that they were able to do that. I think it's more interesting that Campia let it happen. Just because, again, we talked about it last week. It's weird seeing what Campia will and won't allow, which, by the way, was amazing because I don't remember what day it was, but Christian and Schnepp brought back the shit rats right at the opening of the show, which is awesome. I love it that they're keeping they're putting their foot to the ground when it comes to the shit rats. They did something else during when they were doing the New York accents, the Joey Peppers
right,
or whatever the hell those characters are. Amazing. I keep that up. And Campia, you just got to get over that because that's hilarious. And if you're going to let all this other funny stuff go, you can give Collider a little bit of personality.
Right, you said it dead on. If you're going to let Josh Makuga have fun in the middle of your show, at least let Christian and Schnepp have their fun with the shit rats.
Yeah, I think, again, that instance for me said more about Campia than it did Makuga. Because, that's something that you can kind of expect, right? I mean, I know it pissed you off, but...
But at what point is Makuga becoming too much of a distraction? At what point is he trying to get too much attention or too much camera time?
Well, he's the mascot over there,
Since when?
I don't know. I guess he was the self-proclaimed mascot. I mean, and everybody, I don't know. Everybody can have their identity. I understand if you don't want a guy to be douchey or you're not going to like the douchey personality, but, you might be nitpicking. But, again, the closer we get to discussing the Schmoedown protest, I might have turned fully on Makuga, at least for the time being, but we'll save all that for later.
Yeah, there's more where that came from, but as far as viewer engagement, we still had the same setup this week where Wendy was reading Twitter questions, no chat room update. I want to quickly suggest something to you, though. I want to see what you think of this. Obviously, they have the mailbag section of Movie Talk, where people write in emails to their Gmail, they read the email on air and answer it. What if they just stuck to Twitter questions? It's a live show. What if they just reward the live audience with their live Twitter questions? The reason being, a lot of those emails that people write in, they're lengthy, they're thoughtful, they're detailed. You can tell that people spent a lot of time writing them. Is it really in their best interest to have their question addressed quickly on Movie Talk when they're trying to rush to the next item? I just feel like emails are better suited for the weekend mailbag, while the live Movie Talk is better suited for just Twitter questions. It's probably not a big deal to you, but what do you think about a potential change in that regard?
I think I understand why Movie Talk is built the way it is, including mailbag and Twitter questions. I think us as fans love the rapid fire, the random Twitter questions that they might get, and they're just fun. And of course, like you're saying, I like them. I like the fact that they include the Twitter questions. But I think where mailbag comes from is that overall, Movie Talk is and should be a discussion-based show. And that is one element that if you take away, you lose some of that. So involving mailbag, allowing the more long-form questions to be placed in those episodes and hearing from our panelists what they have to say, their thoughts on the subject, I like that too. Now, I would be fine with maybe one mailbag question in one episode of Movie Talk, but overall, again, going back to my original point, I think the fact that they arrived at the idea to include both makes a whole lot of sense. And I like mailbags. I don't think they should touch the mailbag show that's on during the weekend too. But
no way. I mean, that's great. That's a staple. I'm just saying on Movie Talk, reading of emails, it takes a lot of time. Some of them are longer than others. With live Twitter questions, they're going to be brief and to the point. And that way it fits the rapid fire nature of the show, which really they're trying to address a lot of items in 50 minutes. So I just feel like these emails are better served on the weekends.
Look,
that's just me.
I'm fine with just saying, hey, maybe shorter mailbag questions. But as long as they lead to some kind of discussion between the panelists, I'm totally cool with that. Maybe some of the longer questions be saved until, but also like Movie Talk can also allow the more relevant questions. Like if someone sent in a mailbag on a Monday night and they wanted to read it on Tuesday because it involved the casting of a certain somebody in a movie, that makes sense too. So maybe just shorter questions throughout the week, long form on the weekend, and I think that gives the best of both worlds for us.
Fair enough. Just the less reading by the host, the better, because we want more discussion by our panelists.
Have you ever wondered why they include the greetings? Like, am I overthinking it? Like the person greeting and saying, hey, I've listened to Collider Movie Talk since last September, and I've told all of my friends, and I don't go a day without watching it. Like, do you think they could kind of get rid of that stuff? And do you think that might be able to speed it along as well?
They like to include people's praise of themselves, and I think the show, every question that gets read almost always has, hey, I've been a fan for such a long time, love the show. They want to show people that they are beloved. I don't know if people always include that, but I think people always know to include that praise because it increases the chance of them getting their question on air, starting with some complimentary speak.
Yeah, I mean, sometimes those paragraphs of praise are just as long as the question and the discussion in that email. So I could see them thinning that out a little bit.
One of the things that always drove me nuts about John Campea, I'm almost saying Campea like Schnepp says Campea.
Yeah, why does Schnepp do that? That is probably my number one most asked Twitter question that I've sent in to Collider Video. I asked a lot before Campea left. And I thought it was funny, but I always tweeted at them, why does Schnepp intentionally say it differently than everybody else? I know that he knows he does it. I know for a fact that Campea has to have addressed it, and he still does it. So I just have to know where that came from.
I don't know if Schnepp knows he's doing it intentionally.
He has to. He has to.
You would think, but yeah, he's got the emphasis wrong. He says John Campea when it's John Campea. But here's why I think it's not intentional or unintentional. Because half the staff doesn't pronounce Dennis's last name correct either. It's Dennis Zen, and yet half of them say Zhang, no one gets his last name right either. So I feel like maybe John and Dennis don't want to embarrass them or put them on the spot by correcting them. That's all I can think of.
I'm not saying correcting them on air. They have to have talked about it in their personal lives off air. Because they're so close.
But because I'm hearing Schnepp say Campea so much, I'm starting to say it on accident, even though I know full well how to say Campea.
Do I trust Keith David?
Soundbite.
If no one knows what I'm talking about, hearing JTE ask that, I was editing the episode after we recorded, and I got up to go do something, and when I came back, I just hit play, and I hear JTE say, "Do I trust Keith David?" And I busted out laughing for hours. That's exaggeration.
I had a point.
What was your point?
To JTE, I mean.
Oh, you do have a point, for sure. Let's talk about the fact that Campia inserted the Film HQ segment in their summer recap / fall preview or whatever, it was a fall preview. But what I was interested in, his very first episode back, the Tuesday after Labor Day, the panel there did sort of a summer recap. And with that, and then the idea that I think they've done some adjusting when it comes to certain segments. Like I think the box office predictions and stuff, it starts earlier now than it usually did. And I don't know. There was some moving around of some of those.
The rewind was moved up, so they're playing around with format and structure.
So they're playing around with the format, and I didn't mind it. I figured that Campia was sort of... I guess it's the start of Campia making some changes since he's left and maybe some new ideas, whatever. I was fine with it. Not a big deal. And I liked the sort of summer recap segment because they were all talking about it. And I thought that was new to Movie Talk. I don't remember them doing anything like that in the past, correct?
I want to say that they have, but it's not that big a deal.
I've been watching since about this time last year, and I don't remember them doing it last year. I don't remember them doing it for like a summer preview or a winter preview. I don't remember them doing it any other time during the year. So anyway, with that being said, I thought this fall preview segment was going to be like that, where they all discuss the fall movies. Instead, this week, they inserted a clip from Film HQ. Now, I understand on paper Campia saying, hey, how can we plug Film HQ? Complex is the parent company of both of these things. Why not include it? But when it comes to my precious Movie Talk, I think it sucks. And I do not like them doing it at all. Especially when it's like they go to a clip and not everyone there on the panel is even involved. That's another problem I have with it. I just don't like it, period. What do you think?
I agree. If I wanted to watch Film HQ, I'd watch Film HQ. So my question to you is, was this part of the negotiation to get John back on Movie Talk? Did he tell Complex, I'll come back and host Movie Talk, but I want to be able to run Film HQ clips and promote that show via Movie Talk somewhat regularly?
I certainly hope not, because that would spoil why I watch Movie Talk over Film HQ. I don't despise Film HQ. I haven't watched a lot of it. I support it because I still subscribe to it and I just want to support that. But again, when I want to watch Film HQ, I'll go watch Film HQ, but I just don't want it to bleed into Movie Talk. It's totally distracting. It feels totally different than what they're doing. I just... No. And I hope that it's not part of the negotiation, because I'm going to get tired of that real quick.
I feel like Campia's return means we are going to get more Film HQ clips sent our way. I mean, even though John says that he's told it's the most popular show, I feel like with moves like this, they're done for a very specific reason, to help grow that particular show. Furthermore, they added an outtake video in their editorial specials playlist, if you will. So that, again, we have more HQ stuff in that department too. So I feel like this is part of John's return to the channel, is that we will get more Film HQ promotion.
I don't know. I just... let me know, guys, in the comment section below, because I haven't seen anybody talk about that. I guess I wasn't really looking in the YouTube comments, because I don't always watch on YouTube, but I'd be curious to see what people think, if they want to let us know in the comments.
Let me ask you something. Would they ever run a clip from Movie Talk on Film HQ?
I'm not sure. They don't even do that on the live show on Schmoes, no.
Of course they wouldn't. I mean, there's no way John would ever take a clip from Movie Talk and put it on Film HQ. It's a bit of a, I wouldn't say hypocrisy, but he's not going to peddle Movie Talk to that audience, so why should we have to endure that? I don't like it. You don't like it. Before we got on the John Schnepp rant, I just wanted to say one of the things I wasn't looking forward to with John's return, I very much wanted John to come back, but It drives me nuts. It's always driven me nuts how he has to explain the buy or sell segment. I was hoping it would not return since the staff eliminated that explanation, but of course John is back in his old habits and he's given that lengthy explanation, which takes up some time, and it's not a big deal. It's just one of those things that drove me nuts. And I've told you guys before how Schnepp and I had this running joke on Twitter, how neither of us could understand buy or sell. I would ask him, he would ask me in return. And so, yeah, for all those who care, John is back to his buy or sell explanation.
So tell me why that's different than Rocha getting pissed about the punt explanation or explaining how top 10 works, because the idea behind it is to just get people on the same page if they are new viewers. And sometimes we have to remember that there are people coming to this show for the very first time. So just tell me why this is different than what we spoke about with Top 10 last week.
Top 10 is a more complicated format. It's a less popular show. Buy or sell, just the words with a question mark, is far more self-explanatory than one guy's top 10 list, another guy's top 10 list, combine them together, then punt this. I mean, that is a complicated format, especially when the majority of the people watching every day have not seen that show. So there's a reason why Mark, Christian, Dennis did not go into that lengthy explanation once John left the channel, because it was unnecessary. And that's what Schnepp and I were making fun of all the time on Twitter. But John has his habits, and I don't disrespect that whatsoever. It just drives me nuts because it does take up time.
I'm not saying I disagree with you, but I'm just trying to play devil's advocate. I personally think that takes like 15 seconds to explain. I really don't think it's that long at all. Yes, I've heard it a million times. I really personally don't think anything of it.
It doesn't. You don't need to explain it. Do you buy or sell the new Star Wars composer? You can work those words into the question itself and explain the segment right there.
You're right.
Top 10 is a far more complicated program, and it's a new program. It's not established like a Movie Talk's been for 3 to 5 years at least.
I'm not saying I disagree with you. I just think you're awful nitpicky today. What did you eat before this? Did you eat clean before we recorded?
I had Tyson's chicken breast.
How'd you cook it?
I grilled it. I had vegetables and a salad.
That sounds really nice.
Thank you. It was really nice.
And you know what else was clean? The transition into Ashley's promo tag at the end of every Collider video. I think someone over in the studio heard your little complaint last week.
I complained last week how Ashley's tag was way too loud, and for the majority of the videos this week, it was lowered. So thank you to my guardian angel, whomever you are.
Let's briefly talk about all the other Collider content before we move into the Schmoedown. Your girl, Sasha Pearl Raver, was back on TV Talk this week. I thought of you immediately because you were a little bit skeptical. You were a little bit uneasy on our almost went into a John Flickster thing. Did you hear that? You were a little bit skeptical, a little bit mystical, but that's okay. Yeah, that's nice. Anyway, that's my Flick Pick impression.
I've never watched that guy, by the way.
Really?
I've seen him guest on Schmoes or Collider or AMC at some point. I think it was Schmoes, but maybe it was, I don't know where I saw him. I've just never watched his videos, honestly.
Well, sometimes he gets a little bit dark, a little bit weird, but that's okay, because we're in our happy place, and that's nice.
He's the big Jack guy, right?
Yeah.
I saw him on Schmoes with Stuckman one time, I think.
Anyway, you were uneasy about Sasha maybe departing from Collider / Schmoes, so I'm sure you were happy to see her back on TV Talk, right?
Yeah, I was paranoid last week that Sasha may not be on Schmoes anymore, as well as Collider. Obviously, that paranoia was half true. She is still on Collider, though, so that's good. I love her on TV Talk. They put her on Top 10 this week as well. But just to wrap up TV Talk was great this week, back in fine form, and no issues there.
Do you feel kind of bad that we never talk about Jedi Council? Why is that? Why don't we ever talk about Christian's little what word do I want? His pet project? That's not what I want to say. You know what I mean?
It's a well-oiled machine. It doesn't need our criticism. It's almost a perfect show.
Almost. What's that one thing? If you're getting nitpicky, you've already started this. Is there anything that you don't like about Jedi Council?
I don't want Christian to think that it's a perfect show. Otherwise, he'll rest on his laurels. So as long as he thinks that he's still in need of perfection, I'm going to keep that in his head. But the only thing for me, I'm just not into canon. So once the canon stuff arrives, I skip around and move to the next thing. But
do you like Seinfeld impressions?
I love Seinfeld impressions. I always make sure to listen to that introduction. That's way better than Makuga's pick of the week.
The pick of the week.
I do wish, though, that they would title their Jedi Council episodes with less spoiler-based questions. Posing a potential spoiler as a question is still a spoiler. That stuff drives me crazy. Sometimes it's more blatant than others. Like sometimes I'll be reporting something that is a potential rumor or a potential spoiler. I would appreciate a little more restraint for people like me who do not want to know rumors, speculation, what someone in Ireland saw from the corner of their chateau.
I mean, a lot of the time they actually get their titles from the Twitter questions inside. So, yeah, I mean, at first I can see where you certainly did name spoiler-ish titles. I agree with you. But sometimes they come from Twitter questions and you think they're spoiling, but it's actually just purely speculation. Right. So I could see both sides for sure. But
there were a couple times, though, during The Force Awakens, during the lead up to it, that there were some actual spoilers after the fact.
Yeah.
That I'm just kind of on edge about that, but not a big deal. Again, it's a well-oiled machine. Christian knows what he's doing.
We're much more comfortable talking bad about people behind their backs.
It's tough love. That's
one day when we're doing the Schmoeville podcast in the Collider Studios, we might have to be
right. If we were in person, we would be saying none of this.
I might have to be looking right into Christian's eye as I talk shit about something he did on the Schmoedown.
I will be twerking and flexing with Josh Makuga at the studio.
That'll be an interesting day, and feel free to tweet at Christian and create that demand for our show on the Collider Studio. But the last thing I want to talk about is top 10, and again, it centers around Sasha Pearl Raver. I think someone told us that she was going to be on top 10 on YouTube. Did you watch this episode? I know you're not the biggest fan of top 10, but
yeah, someone tipped me off that Roka said it over the weekend on Mailbag that she would be on. I tuned in, started watching it, didn't last, turned it off. I just can't get into that show for the life of me. I don't know what it is. Maybe it's that whole viewer engagement thing. Do you want me to explain that again? Do you want me to explain the whole viewer engagement top 10 thing?
I really don't.
Okay. Let me know if you do.
What I will say, just to fill you in briefly, what I will say is that there was a little bit of Sasha taking control, and not intentionally. I think it's part of her personality and I love her for it, but I think Roka kind of felt like the show was getting away from him. And then there was a little bit of confusion on what the format was and when it was her turn and that kind of stuff. I didn't think it was a big deal, but I could see where, if you had finished the episode, I guarantee that's what you would have brought up here today. I didn't think it was that big of a deal, but whatever. I mean,
Christian Harloff is nodding his head right now.
I just don't want people over there to just feel like it has to be so stiff. I'm fine with following the format, but just let it go where it goes a little bit, and don't get upset because someone goes on a tangent or speaks out of turn. It doesn't have to be that serious. I mean, have fun. That's why we love these people, and I'm not saying go full schmoes because it's fine to have those separate identities, but the backbone of the Collider stuff is still the structure, and people could still, give in a little bit and let a little loose. I mean, come on.
I'm going to punt my top 10 point for later in the Schmoes No discussion. I want to make a quick point or question to you about nightmares. Have you noticed that the Nightmare crew is overtly positive when it comes to discussing horror films on any other show where that subject is brought up?
Well, I mean, I think that's sort of what...
they have to be the defenders of all things horror when it comes to any other shows where horror is discussed, especially since Christian is not a big horror fan.
Well, I think that's why the shows that Collider Collider sets up right now, Jedi Council, Heroes, and Nightmares, they're centered around genre, right? So there's no way that they could do a show based on romantic comedies. Like, there's just something about these genres. They've got sci-fi, fantasy covered in Star Wars, and then horror in general just has this really passionate fan base. So I think that's where that comes from. And obviously they started it because Clark Wolf loves horror, so I get that. To add on to that, you just so happen to have Mark Riley and Perry Nemiroff, who I think are very similar personalities. Like, I almost feel like they're the exact same, in that
they're always in agreement.
They're always in agreement. They're maybe sometimes overly enthusiastic, but they're always enthusiastic about what they're talking about. And I remember being stunned because Riley and I discussed Suicide Squad on Film Beef not too long ago, and I remember thinking it was so crazy that he hated it. Like, he passionately hated it. He's since talked about it on Schmoes Know, and that was like a real departure from the Mark Riley that I knew. But that just goes into their personalities. So I definitely see what you're saying. I feel like all I've done this episode is you've brought up a problem and I've just played devil's advocate or been like, well, I can kind of see why it's like that. But I mean, it's true. I do get what you're saying.
I mean, the Blair Witch discussion, which we'll get to later, is a perfect example of this point. So maybe we'll hold off on.
The original question is, have I noticed? Not really, because again, that's the show that I watch the least, but I can see what you're saying, basing it on all the other things that they've been on.
It's not about Nightmares, it's about how they talk about horror films on the other shows besides Nightmares.
So you just want them to speak poorly about something. Is that what you're saying?
Not necessarily, but I mean, again, Blair Witch during this Schmoes Know episode is a perfect example. They were very positive about that film, even though Christian had some issues with it, JTE had some issues with it. So I feel like they're more positive than they have to be because they are on Nightmares and they have to be the defenders of all things horror. And you don't see Christian having to defend Star Wars every time criticism is brought up on other shows. You don't see Schnepp having to defend every comic book film that is brought up or is criticized on other shows.
Schnepp straight up says when a comic book movie sucks, and I even brought that up a second ago. So I haven't watched Nightmares as much, but I agree they're usually just overly positive, and I would like to hear them say that they didn't like something in horror, and maybe they have, and we might get fact check out the ass in the YouTube comments. But are you ready to talk about Schmoedown? I know. Let's talk about the ultimate Schmoedown between Christian and Roca, and then we'll save the tag match for the Schmoes No Show discussion because it plays right into the protest. Does that work?
Works for me.
So, competition-wise, like when you think of like what ultimately is the movie trivia Schmoedown, movie trivia contest, competition, this might have been the toughest competition to date. And I don't know about you, but this is probably the match I was looking forward to the most. Not only are these two gonna bring it when it comes to shit talking, but they were like just so like even going into the match. Like, you ultimately have no idea who's gonna come out on top. I feel like both of them, they have the same strengths, I believe, but ultimately they're so evenly matched. So, you know, I picked Christian from what I remember because for some reason, again, this sort of plays into what my mentality was for JTE. There's just something about Roca that I don't think he's ever going to get to the top. But, you know, now I'm sort of biting my tongue after that. But Christian was my pick going into it, I believe. Not only did Christian kick a lot of ass, I mean, there wasn't a disappointing moment, in my opinion. Well, I might take a second to look at my notes and find one. But Christian matched Ellis's record from last week with 19 points, and then Roca won the match by beating that record with 21 points. So just, again, alone, doesn't that say that that was easily the best competition to date in the Schmoedown?
Absolutely. It was the highest scoring match ever. And to me, it's the high watermark of the Schmoedown so far. They even had Freddie Prinze on hand to call the match, which is just icing on the cake. And really, this is the go-to match when you want to show the Schmoedown to the uninitiated. This is the one that you'll refer them to. Unfortunately, it had to coincide with the worst match in Schmoedown history in the same week.
And I made that point to my friend Jay, who was on this podcast before. He's not the biggest diehard watcher of this material. He actually did catch the Christian and Roca Schmoedown purely based on what you just said. I think that was the one match that interests him, even though he's sort of an outsider. So I agree with what you said, and I thought it'd be funny to also show him the JTE match right after to show what else we had to deal with this week. But, dude, all around, it was great. One problem I had was, again, I love these two personalities, some of the best in the Schmoedown. Period. They're shit talking gold. This match had the worst character or personality intros ever in the Schmoedown. And I have no idea if you caught this. I have no idea what was going on. But did you notice that when they were announcing the people, you had the thumbnail of the personality, and then it never cut back to them opening the curtain? It was like way too late, and it was like really choppy. And they didn't even show the intros at all. And I thought that was not nearly as fun as it could have been. Did you notice that?
I didn't notice that, but I did notice that there was some random audio playing right when Roca won the match. Like there was some other audio being picked up on the feed. Maybe it was someone in the room, but it sounded like a separate audio track altogether. Did you happen to catch that as well?
I didn't catch that.
So yeah, it sounds like there's some cleanup that needs to take place on this episode later, because this episode should be pristine. This is the time capsule episode of Schmoedown. This is the episode that proves what this show has and what Movie Fights does not have. So Roca was wearing a blindfold during this match. Do you think he got this idea from Derek Cianfrance's story about how he blindfolded Alicia Vikander on the set of The Light Between Oceans?
A better question, do you think all of the people on Collider and Schmoes actually watch the daily content that they're not on?
I think Schmoes know, because it's a weekly event, and Derek Cianfrance, that's content you can't miss. So I would bet anything that Roca watched the Derek Cianfrance interview.
I also thought that this episode in particular, they didn't have any random categories that they stumbled upon. I felt like they were all, well, I guess Roca got family movies. He ended up getting it right, though, for the win, I believe. But, I mean, they got Spielberg, they got fantasy sci-fi, Christian did. So I thought a lot of them actually, they both got categories that play to their strengths. And that made it even more exciting, especially because there could have been another Bestman moment. I'm not saying necessarily with Roca, but it would have been really interesting if they missed something that was in their wheelhouse in that way. But I think that made it even better.
I'm shocked Christian did not get the Master and Commander question correct, because I know that he's talked about that movie before. A couple multiple choices killed him in hindsight, but Roca pulled out some amazing answers. And I actually think the earlier round questions were harder than a lot of the later round questions, as well as the 5-pointers. I mean, Roca had a John Hughes guess. That interview with a vampire question was impossible. But most of all, the biggest turning point in this match was Roca getting the Halloween subtitle correct, the last Donald Pleasance film. That was a miracle. That was really the kicker right there.
I agree. I'm really glad that there were some questions that also were recent, like who directed Edge of Tomorrow. I would have been,
Doug, as a 5-point question.
Yeah, I disagree that it should have been a 5-point, but I would have been really disappointed if Christian didn't get that right. So thank God. He thought about it for a second, so I was really worried. But just to kind of sum it up, though, I mean, I don't remember who you picked to win, but who did you think was going to win by the end, since it was so close?
I picked Kid Christian to win, and I thought he was going to take it. I felt like he had the momentum for most of this match, and that Roca's guesses were not going to be there when it counted most. But that Mrs. Doubtfire question, I'm not saying it was easy, but if that's your weakest category, that is the one that you want, because so many of us watched that movie 1,000 times. And do you think they gave away too much information? A recently divorced actor, they gave his name Daniel Hillard first. Do you think the extra description was too much info.
It's quite possible. I think that's something. By the way, Ellis pointed this out, and I think I knew this already, but all of these things need to be taken up with Chris Skalicki, who apparently is the writer of their questions. So maybe that whole Bruce Lee tangent that JTE and I went on last week, we should have taken it up with Skalicki. I would like to have him on the show, by the way.
Did you know Daniel Hillard? When you just heard the name, did you know what they were talking about?
No.
What about when they said recently divorced actor?
Yes. Yeah. I think that's what gave it away. But Daniel, if I had only heard Daniel Hillard, I probably wouldn't have gotten it. So
see, I knew the name just because I've seen the movie so many times, but the qualifier gave it away even more. I just want to say, I'm kind of hard on Rocha sometimes on this show, but I'm so glad that he dropped the BS in victory. I thought he really brought some class to his win. And Kid Christian was just as classy with a K, in defeat. So I really like the sportsmanship that they showed, unlike the worst Schmoedown matchup earlier this week.
You got to give Rocha a ton of credit where credit is due, you know. And I saw someone on Twitter say there wasn't a loser coming out of that match. I mean, they both played a great game, and us as fans could not have asked for more. And again, I thought going into the tournament that was going to be the match to look out for, and I think they totally delivered. So I'm really, really happy we got this matchup, and and hopefully more people find them and love this episode like we do. People, you know, we talk about Schmoedown sort of being the gateway for people. Hopefully more people found this episode.
It's a big win for the Schmoedown, and like Christian said, a great match is a win for Christian as a promoter.
Yeah, I agree.
So even if he's on the losing end, it's a good thing because great matches mean only good things for his show.
And you know, he feels good about it because he isn't saying that shit that like he's gonna retire from singles. Like, I think he feels really good about it, and it didn't really spoil his chances in this competition in the future. So again, it was just all around great fun, and it's gonna definitely make. I'm sort of again biting my tongue a little bit because I didn't think Rocha would get this far. And, you know, he's turning out to be a scary contender going into the future. So,
but I kept worrying that Rocha would spike the football after he won, but he dropped the persona and he shook Christian's hand. I really liked how he handled victory. So
let's talk about the final match in the what is it, semifinal? I don't know. Whatever round this is in the tournament. There's a final match going on next week. Clark Wolf versus Josh McCouga. So I don't know if you caught this in the live match. I caught it while it was being taped, and I got tweeted at because I guess other people have caught it.
Yeah. When
Christian was promoting this match, you already know what I'm gonna say.
Well, he was flustered for a minute. He had to think about.
Yeah. So to lay it out for those of you who might not know, on the live show this week, Christian took a moment to figure out which matchup was next for McCouga. McCouga was sitting there, and you could see Christian, he looked up in the air and was thinking, and you could tell that he was trying to navigate in his head, like, hey, we have taped these episodes in the past, so where is McCouga right now in the tournament? Which, in my opinion, gives away that McCouga is the winner of McCouga and Clark Wolf. Now, there might be some skeptics out there that say that Christian did it on purpose. I think there's no way he did it on purpose. I think it was a total in-the-moment brain fart, and I'm calling it right now. Josh McCouga beats Clark Wolf in next week's match. Do you agree?
I totally agree. And even when Mark asked Christian to kind of hype his match with Rocha, he had this little smile on his face for some reason. Like he didn't want to push it too much farther, you could say. Like he was being weird in general about promoting his own match. So I got kind of an indication there that he might be on the losing end.
Right.
But obviously this was more than I ever could have expected. A great match, like I just said, is a win for everybody.
And it was towards the end of the live show that he did that, guys. So I would definitely go back and check that out and let us know what you think, because I think it's a dead giveaway. But, you know, time will tell. We'll be talking about it next week. So we talked about a really great Schmoedown. Are you ready to get into the live show discussion and talk about this protest from this tag team match.
Do you want to go straight into the Schmo test, or do you want to start with the live show stuff first?
I don't know. Let's talk about...
Let's take a break from the Schmodown and go to the live show and then end on the Schmo test.
Okay.
Thing is that I'm not a big fan of reading, but I love fiction. I love being swept up in a world of imagination. So what better time to join Audible right now, because it is a book that you don't have to read, especially if you're on your daily commute. You shouldn't be reading while you're driving. There's only so much time in the day, so why not pass the time with Audible audiobooks? It could be a mystery, a thriller, a memoir, a bestseller, a Star Wars novel. Audible can turn your commute, your downtime into another world completely. Just download your books or shows to your mobile device and listen while the call pullers fly by with an unmatched selection of audiobooks, original audio shows, news, and comedy. Audible is your best source for traffic entertainment or any other time you want to get swept up in what Mark Ellis would say is a world of imagination.
All right, so we have Schmo's No Show, number 250. They didn't care at all that they had 250 episodes in their belt. They didn't really play that up at all, which, okay, whatever. I was kind of hoping for this big blowout show, maybe playing a whole bunch of stuff for it, but we heard about this protest early in the week. Katie Sackhoff is coming next week, so they didn't really do anything for the occasion, except they announced that Perry is the full-time co-host.
Well, they didn't say that specifically. They welcomed her to the show. They didn't say the words full-time co-host. Christian said that on Twitter, but he held back on the show, probably for a reason.
So you think he changed his mind, or do you think he misspoke on Twitter?
I don't think he misspoke on Twitter. I don't think, when he first made the announcement on Twitter, I don't think he knew what was coming on the 22nd, which is another announcement he teased on this show. And next week, I think we'll get the confirmation, Perry is going to be the full-time co-host. So I think, in light of next week's announcement that he was not expecting, I think that's why he's saving Perry's official status for next week.
Well, talk to me about this announcement in general and your reaction to Perry being there, because I know you have quite a bit to say about this.
Well, everybody knows, both of us are huge fans of the SPR experience, Sasha Pearl Raver. And ever since the Derek Cianfrance episode, things just have not been right with Sasha and the rest of the Schmo's No Show. She's been absent. She missed the Q&A. She has not been on the show since. A lot of weird stuff going on. And, of course, last week we heard that Perry was hired full-time as a co-host. So that indicates to me Sasha is out. And Sasha did reply in a tweet to somebody that she'd be back on the show on September 29th. But I think that plan has now changed, and that she'll be the announcement on the 22nd as to who is leaving. I have some alternate theories besides that, but based on her unexplained absences, the key to these things is always whether an absence is explained. They have not addressed Sasha in a couple weeks, and that is really the biggest sign that she's the one that's leaving. So, what are your thoughts so far on what what I've said?
I'm going to go the other way. So if you follow Sasha on Twitter, I guess you obviously do, or Instagram, you'll see that she's been busy healing her cat. Her cat had to have surgery, whatever. I think that there's stuff going on that just makes her less available currently. And she did not have to answer that tweet from that person who asked where she's been. So when she says she's coming back on the 29th, yes, I believe she's coming back on the 29th. And correct me.
This was 10 days ago, though.
That's fine.
Enough things could have changed in that time.
Sure, but this is also, correct me if I'm wrong, but Christian did say that the announcement comes next week, which would be the 22nd, right?
You're going to steal my theory, aren't you? You're going to steal my theory that I told you earlier this week, aren't you? You son of a bitch.
No, go ahead.
Don't steal my theory, please.
I'm not going to steal it. Go ahead.
Well, Katie Sackhoff, she's going to be on the show September 22nd. It's her first time on the show in a while, and it's episode 251. I've speculated for a while that they're going to do kind of a retrospective during her appearance to recognize how far they've come after 250 episodes. Well, famously, Katie handed off her role as co-host to none other than Tiffany Smith. Tiffany's status on the show has been rather murky, I'd say the last year or so. She's not on very much anymore. She's got a ton of things going on. That's good for her that she's got a great career, quite honestly. She's got that AMC show now, does stuff for Fandango. She's doing great.
Yeah.
But I think after the recent appearance when Christian was on vacation, she got a lot of slack. She got a lot of crap from the viewers about Suicide Squad and how, she's a DC shill, and obviously she does work for DC. Part of me thinks that she's going to be the announcement as to who is leaving, because she's just had enough of getting that kind of abuse, and it's fitting because Katie is there. They're going to be there together to send Tiffany off in style. And then they'll announce, Perry is the one who's going to take over full time. So maybe that's why Christian was holding back on Perry's true status for next week.
If that's the case and you think Tiffany is leaving because of that, for one, she can find that sort of criticism anywhere. It's not just with the Schmoes Know Show. She can Instagram a picture and someone's going to say that shit in her comments. So I don't think that's what would ultimately push her over the edge. The second thing is that...
Wait, hold on. Let me just say, I still believe Sasha will be the announcement next week. This is just an alternate theory that would make sense.
If you were listening to the Schmoeville podcast currently, and you are someone who's given Tiffany shit for liking Suicide Squad because she works for DC, just stop. Just stop. Even if it's true, who cares? Give her just that one. It's just one opinion. She'll talk about it for 1 week, and that's it. It doesn't matter. It goes in line with the people that are complaining that these people are bought out by studios, which is stupid and ignorant. Just please stop it. I'm tired of hearing them react to people blaming them for that. Just quit. Who cares? Moving on.
She was a fan of DC before she worked for DC, so it's a moot point all around. But again, that's just I'm trying to sell the idea of the theory. It could be a possibility. She's got so many other things going on that maybe she just doesn't want to give the show so little when she can't give them any more. Maybe she's just trying to do them a favor instead of barely appearing like she does now. Again, I don't think that's it, though. I think Sasha's the announcement.
What I was going to say is that I fully believe that Sasha is sticking around. I don't think anything goofy is really going on other than she's temporarily taking some time off. But I think the decision is going to be that Miri is leaving.
That was my third theory. And you stole that theory because I've been on the Miri paranoid train since I started this show.
Well, I'll just say that you've convinced me, because everything that you've said in the past few weeks, the fact that, you've been counting down the weeks that she's been off camera, the fact that when
she's been off camera 6 out of the last 8 weeks,
the fact that even this week, she wasn't even mentioned by name, was she?
Nope. Not once.
Exactly. So, I don't know. I tried to get Christian to tell me who it was going to be, and all he said was, brace for impact.
Yeah, he said the same thing to me.
So what do you is it more impactful that Miri leaves, or is it more impactful that Sasha leaves, or is it more impactful that Tiffany leaves? Like, what's the bigger hit? What's the bigger hit for you, Brian?
The bigger hit for me within the actual show itself is Sasha, because she brings entertainment. Tiffany wasn't appearing that often anyway. Miri wasn't on camera that often anyway. So Sasha is the biggest hit to my experience directly. So that's the one that I don't want to see happen, but they haven't mentioned her on air either. And if you watch that Derek C. and France interview, there's a moment where Ellis is saying thank you to the guy. Christian's about to do the same. Sasha comes in and jacks the moment from him. And
I just don't think Christian would be that upset over that.
And Christian gives her this look like, and there were several other looks that episode, including when Mance came on and Sasha and Mance took over, where you could tell just Christian was not happy, and she has not been on the show since. She has not been mentioned. They've got a new co-host that is taking Sasha's place, literally where she was sitting. It's absolutely Sasha.
We sort of got away from what we were talking about with Perry in general. Now, I don't want to talk too much about this. Maybe when we actually find out who it is, then we'll get into this a little bit more. But let me just say personally, yes, no, I'm not there to see what goes on behind the scenes. I'm not there hosting the Schmoes No Live show and experiencing what it's like to host it with Sasha. Sasha is easily the biggest impact for me if she was asked to leave the show. I think if Christian was upset about those specific moments, it's
not just that.
It just seems they seem too small. Like, I feel like that can be solved from a simple discussion.
It's not just that. Don't take everything I say like that's the only examples that I have as to why this would happen.
I'm just saying something like that can be.
I mean, look at the fan comments. Look at the fan comments. Every damn comment on any video with Sasha.
I don't think Christian gives a shit about what the fans are saying. Ultimately, it's his decision. And I personally don't think that if the move is Perry in for Sasha, I think I hate it. I mean, I just don't think it works.
It's already happened, though. Sasha has not been on in at least 3 weeks.
We don't know that.
Perry is now sitting in her spot.
She was sitting at her spot for one episode, and her role...
But she was announced on Twitter as the full-time co-host. That was Sasha's title beforehand.
You said it yourself that Christian went back on it on last night's show, and it became sort of more ambiguous. You were the one that corrected me from the full-time statement.
Just because he didn't say the words on the show doesn't mean that that's not the actual status for Perry. I think he's saving those specific words for after Sasha departs so that he can make the announcement all at once. It's the passing of the baton to Perry.
This conversation will be better after we find out who's actually gone. But let's get back to the question I asked like 10 minutes ago, which was, how do you feel about Perry being on the show?
Well, plus he said, this is not the last time you're going to be on the show, Perry. You're going to be on
I know that.
A bunch of times. So they were setting it up. But
he also said that about Mance and Mova or Sinead, whoever the hell else. And we've only seen them once, so whatever.
Yeah, Sinead came on one more time for the celebrity impression dating game, but... Mance, who knows? But anyways, Perry as a full-time co-host. I like Perry. She's a good little reporter. She's smart. Seems like a really nice person. As far as her fit in Schmoeville and on the show, I just don't think she brings that edge or that dynamic that SPR brings. And I don't want to just compare her to Sasha, because you can bring something else to the show while being totally different from Sasha. But I just don't think she's the right fit. And it's only one episode. It's a small sample size, but she didn't talk very much. She's very quiet unless you get her going on something that she's passionate about, like Blair Witch. So what it does allow, though, is that it allows Mark and Christian to have control of their show. It allows them to dictate where it goes. And sometimes with Sasha, they weren't able to do that. So I see the advantages from their point of view if those are issues that they're actually concerned about. But from where I'm sitting, I'm used to the female co-host having an edge, having this wild card capability. Katie had it. Catherine Reitman had it. Sasha had it. Alicia sometimes had it. But I don't see that edge or that dynamic with Perry. What about you?
Well, I think my biggest problem is that the episode didn't serve Perry at all. So, again, there was one topic, Blair Witch, that she could have been passionate about, and that was great. Even though that's a whole other discussion, how you feel about, I guess, this episode in general. But they took they started out doing that Harloff podcast kind of segment with Perry, and that lasted 2 minutes before it went to a totally new tangent. And I feel like overall, Perry said 2 things the entire episode. She was forgettable. And I'm not even saying that speaking to Perry. I think the episode did not involve her enough, and it just wasn't enough for me to make a definitive opinion of Perry. Overall, I know I like Perry. She's great. She's very nice. Do I agree that she's probably not the best fit? No. Or yes, I do agree that she's probably not the best fit. But at the same time, the episode didn't really serve her well. So
what's going to happen when Brett is back? I mean, you have to sing for your supper on Schmoes. You really have to fight for your airtime. And I don't think she's someone that is going to fight for her moments like Sasha would or like Katie would. Yeah, Christian will set her up, but you can't always be set up by the co-host or the host.
Is there a chance that the person leaving is a total fake out and it's like Ken Knapsack? Is there any chance at all that it's a total fake out from the other three candidates that we predicted so far?
Ken will never leave.
Okay.
Ken is too loyal. He'll never leave.
Well, just the question itself, maybe Ken's not the best example, but just the question itself, is it possible that it's a fake out?
Also, the clue word, toughness. Toughness describes Sasha far more than Miri or Tiffany. Wouldn't you say?
I could see them all being tough in ways. So that didn't really give me a clue, to be honest. So I don't know if it felt like it was obvious. I guess it does feel obvious to you, but it didn't really feel obvious to me.
Isn't that funny, though? I planted this Miri idea in my first episode. She got hired by HitFix for Fandemonium. She's got the girls in film or on film back going now. It just seems like she's like Sally Field and Mrs. Doubtfire. She had bitten off more than she could chew. She's got kids. She's got a husband. And maybe she just had to, unfortunately, make a cut. And it happened to be our show, our Schmoes Know show.
It'll be like Schnepp being Nostradamus and predicting all the box office numbers there for a while. Maybe you'll predict every Schmo member that gets the boot from here on out.
I'm 70-30 that it's Sasha. That's how confident I am.
I don't need it. I don't know. I'll talk about it more next week. Let's just talk about, again, the episode in general. I mean, how do you feel about it? We had they finally addressed #Yellis, which is basically Ellis getting mad and defending his stance with the John Williams and working on a stand-up comment. Brett wasn't there. They talked about Blair Witch, and they did yet another fall movie preview. I mean, all those things. What did you like? What didn't you like?
Well, obviously, if I'm on a Schmoes Know after show discussing the show, everybody knows I love the show just by that alone. But this episode was probably my least favorite episode in a long, long time. In a long, long time. I mean, some of my favorite people were not there. Brett, Sasha. And there just didn't seem to be an energy. There didn't seem to be a direction. The Schmo test was a disaster, which we'll get into. There just didn't this episode just was missing the direction. And that's what worries me, that if Miri is the one who is leaving, that her absence on this show meant that it lacked the structure that it would normally have. So maybe this is a sign of what a Miri-less show would be like, because she did put the shows together.
That's interesting, and I guess I should have been able to put two and two together, but you're thinking that we're seeing slack on the show, and it's based on Miri's absence.
It just didn't have that direction, that format, that it just didn't feel like that well-oiled machine like it usually is. I keep saying that, but she does put these shows together. She puts a lot of the questions together, topics together. She was kind of the glue for a while as their executive producer. So maybe this is what things are like when she's not around, proving how valuable she is. We knew she was valuable already, but Brett's energy was lost. Sasha's energy was lost. Makuga, even though I have a complicated relationship with him, he was not on until the end of the show, which meant you didn't have his desperate cries for attention throughout the entire episode. So Finstock was late, so you didn't have that dynamic either. It was just a strange episode, and Perry was new, of course, and she's not going to overdo it in her first episode. However, she had a great comment about Ellis, how he looks 10 shades redder in response to something he said. So she had a nice little zinger in there, because sometimes Ellis can look a little red for some reason. Maybe it's the alcohol, but
I want to talk about probably my biggest issue with this episode. Do I agree it's one of the lesser episodes that we've seen in Phase 6? Yes. The biggest problem I have is the promise that we got on Tuesday. Now, I watched that tag team match, and I was absolutely furious about it, and we will get into details quickly. But the promise that this was going to be protested, even though I was also furious at that idea. Like, I could have waited a little. I mean, I needed some time to cool off, but the fact that Makuga had the nerve, or I'll include Finstock, it's not just Makuga. The fact that, what do you call them? What's their celebrity?
Fanuga is their portmanteau.
The fact that Fanuga had the balls to protest that match made me so mad. And I told Christian that. Like, I was ready to light them up on tonight's episode.
Likewise.
I felt that the episode did not deliver on that promise at all, because even though I was mad, it was like an excitement mad. Like, it was something I was really going to get into, similar to like the decision. And I thought we were going to get another great, like, produced moment from the show. And I was able to suspend my disbelief for this episode. And that fell completely flat. And I don't know if it's because just it was worded incorrectly, because it wasn't really a protest of the match. It was just like a behind the scenes discussion for rule changes. I don't know if it was because Finstock thought he was going to be there and didn't end up showing up until later, that it totally ruined that. But that just fell completely flat, and it did not deliver on the promise of a protest. So
there's a couple things here. Fanuga were never on the same page. Makuga was arguing one thing, Finstock was arguing another. Second, they were both loaded during the match itself, and so what seemed like a good idea at the time didn't turn out to be a good idea in hindsight. The other issue is this was filmed 4 weeks ago, the match. So they had 4 weeks to put together this protest, and it looks like it was thrown together 5 minutes before the show. In fact, Finstock didn't even show up on time and barely had anything to add. So the first thing Makuga says when he comes out, I'm not protesting the loss. I'm protesting that it's not more entertaining, that it's not more fun.
Boo.
Come on.
Boo. That was a terrible point, for one. And we'll talk about like the sport versus entertainment here in a second. But let's just talk about the match in general. Everyone knows this match blows ass, okay? I'm actually really happy for JTE. JTE was getting shit for being on our episode, and I saw him getting hate in the chat. But I've come around on JTE because we got to speak to him last week. I'm actually really happy for him, because Makuga and Finstock are totally to blame because it wasn't a good match. They didn't know their shit. I think that they were loaded. I agree with you. They seemed intoxicated. And they just didn't know anything. They didn't know that J.J. Abrams directed MI3. Now, not only is that totally ignorant, but I take extreme offense to that, being a Bad Robot J.J. Abrams fanboy, because that's just...
It's unacceptable.
And then they want to bitch at that Lars and the real girl question. How do you misunderstand that question unless you're intoxicated? It's just bullshit. And their answer was also asinine, because it was Amber Heard, who isn't even in that movie. You weren't thinking it was something else.
Right.
I think you were just drunk. And I don't know. I thought the match was totally stupid. They deserved to lose. And that's why I was so furious about this protest, right? Did I miss any highlights from this pitiful match?
No, you nailed it. I mean, I think part of me wonders how serious were the discussions of them completely axing this episode. They had to have had the discussion to some extent. But I think because JTE won, I don't think they could throw away a JTE win given the streak that he's been on of late. Plus, JTE would have gone crazy if this was wiped away after what he's been through lately. But this is so embarrassing for the Schmoedown because you got the best match ever this week, followed by or preceded by the worst match ever, which just so happened to be the kickoff of the tag team matchups, the tag team league.
Yeah.
So it's so disheartening in that sense when this needed to be something special to kickstart tag team matchups.
And I'm really glad you made that point about JTE deserving the win, because that's the only thing that I think kept them from redoing the episode.
Absolutely.
If Makuga, what we saw on the live show, that whole discussion, Ellis said it perfectly. I don't know why we couldn't have just had this behind the scenes. But look, if they recorded that match and they didn't like the rules, Makuga could have gone to Christian off air, just been like, hey, what if we did it this way? And they could have re-recorded the match and none of us would have known. And then they could have actually given us a good match and then spared us from the shitty protest too. Like every bit of this could have been avoided and no one would have known. And yeah.
They had 4 weeks to figure this out.
I see what you're saying with the JTE thing. And, again, sometimes this stuff gets worked out behind the scenes and we don't know how someone would actually feel. Didn't JTE come around on the idea though for the rules? Like there was no chance that they were going to overrule the win, but didn't JTE eventually come around to what Makuga suggested?
Well, he liked the idea of more collaboration in the second round with your partner because that means he has the potential to get more points by getting that extra boost from your partner, which you did not get previously in round 2.
Right.
So that was, he stated that directly. It's more points for him.
I can't believe I'm actually saying this, but in this case, it actually would have helped if the Schmoedown was produced in that sense. And I think the real JTE that, isn't an on-camera persona would have actually gone with it. Do I think that they might have lost due to that fact? No, because I think Snyder and JTE showed how great they are as a team, even though both teams didn't know what Tarantino's highest grossing movie is.
Goodness gracious.
My God. That is so... I thought it was so obvious. I mean, come on.
It's not Raging Bull level bad, but it is. It's up there.
Yeah.
And I don't know, man. It's just... I'm all about sportsmanship, and when you get your ass handed to you, and that's the way you respond in the match itself, protesting, being poor sports, and then wanting to do this official protest on the show, and then not having anything worthwhile to say, other than you want more entertainment for us, saying how you're looking out for us as fans and the product that we receive. Come on.
Well, I didn't like the fact that he was calling it sports entertainment because I see it as, okay, you can make your argument. Obviously, it's entertaining, but none of me thinks there are people out there who actually think this is produced. But at the backbone of it, it's about the competition first, because that's the end. That's what the end result relies on, is the trivia competition, and then around it has this sort of this entertainment built on top of it. So I don't like the idea that he said or suggested that it's more about the entertainment. And ultimately, it's his fault it wasn't entertaining because they didn't show up. So
a competitive match is entertaining. He did not compete, therefore it wasn't entertaining.
Right.
Very
100%
simple.
agree. The only thing I wanted to point out, and this is kind of just to get it in there, doesn't really apply to either one of these points, but Jeff Snyder, there was a little flub on his end because he called out Christian for not including the word domestic, and Christian fired back and said it absolutely was in the question, and he reread the question with the word domestic. I rewinded it. Christian didn't say the word domestic when he actually asked the question. I thought that was worth noting, but other than that, it's purely to blame, or the team is purely to blame for this episode. And what sucked is because Makuga came out shit talking, which started out kind of being funny, But now going back in context, it just kind of sucks and it's annoying because he had no right to do it.
I mean, it's funny that the attention whore Josh McCouga wants more entertainment on the show, but the funniest part to me about all this was Ken. How when Ken came out and he heard about this protest, it was puzzling to him because it had been so long since the match 4 weeks ago, and in Ken years, that's the equivalent of a year in knapsack years. So he had no idea what they could possibly be protesting because it was so long ago. And sure enough, they didn't know what they were protesting either.
Right. So now that you've connected it back to the live show, I mean, how did you feel about the build up for the protest? Were you excited, and then did you ultimately feel disappointed, or did you just all around hate everything about it?
Didn't like anything about it. It was flat. It was a waste of time. This was kind of this cemented how disappointed I was in this episode. I thought there were some great moments here and there. Sex Dungeon expert JTE, Archives, so many great moments. Ken's news was on point yet again. I loved his point about Guy Pearce. Even though he's making jokes, he manages to make some great points about the industry in general. But there were great moments, but overall, just what the show was built around was a big time disappointment.
So you're telling me that,
and I blame Fanuga for that.
So you're
not Kid Christian.
You're telling me that if this wasn't one of those great produced moments like the decision and like Finstock showed up on time and they played up this protest and actually maybe for the fun of it debated on overruling the JTE's win, like you wouldn't have like found that really exciting ultimately?
Well, if they spent the 4 weeks that they had to prepare something that could be considered thoughtful or entertaining, then I'd be singing a different tune. But they put this together 2 minutes before the show. Finstock didn't even show up on time. That's how much he cared about this protest. And neither teammate was on the same page. Josh wanted something completely different than what Finstock wanted. So it's just a disaster.
I think this would have been something interesting to hear from Christian, like if we interviewed him. But I just don't want, and again, this might have been an accident, but from here on out, I really don't want to see this type of moment on the live show. So
this is why Josh McCouga was suspended for 2 weeks. Also, this match was recorded the same week. I've done the calculation. This match was recorded the same week that McCouga went off on Umberto. So this fuels my suspension conspiracy theory even more.
Like that was the final straw type of thing.
Right, that this was the final straw, as this probably would have happened the day after the live show where he went off on Umberto. So I think Christian had had enough at that point.
Interesting. Very interesting. Well, I think we've said enough. I mean, it just came down to the fact that we weren't feeling that. Or the match, for that matter, on Tuesday. However, I am looking forward, very much so, to Sam Witwer versus Freddie Prinze Jr. And I have no idea who's going to win because I've never seen them compete. But I'm just I'm hoping there's a lot of fun and that it helps grow the channel because of their participation. So I just can't wait to see that match and what comes of it. So,
how good was Freddie as co-host?
Very good. Very good. Despite our little minor miscommunication on Twitter, I love you, Freddie. And I can't believe I'm saying that, too, because prior to like a year ago, I only knew you as that guy from She's All That. And then all of a sudden, I'm like, oh, well, he's friends with all these people I watch on YouTube. And then he was somebody that I could follow on Twitter. I never in my life would have thought I would follow him on Twitter. But anyway, he's a really cool guy, super genuine, super nice. And I can't wait to see him and Sam Witwer, because Sam Witwer is a badass as well, because, you know, I played as him in The Force Unleashed. So, but anyway, I hope that match is a lot of fun. I can't wait to see that next week.
Can I make one more Josh McCouga dig? Well, during the Schmoedown, for the second week in a row, Josh had to bring out the wheel, despite Sinead and Natasha being on hand for this episode. These gals could use the screen time, give them some on-camera time, let them have their moment. Josh has plenty of his, whether it's twerking and flexing or having these faux schmo tests. That's all.
You had to get one more dig at McCouga before we move on to some of the quotes that I wrote down. And usually I don't write down a lot of the quotes, but I figured, hey, why not talk about these real quick, and then we'll sign off here. I have no idea if I might have just witnessed the first time one of Ellis's jokes fell flat, and I mean for everyone. A lot of the people in the studio might not like everything that Ellis says, but I usually find myself supporting it.
Flatter than the Schmo test?
I don't know. This was really awkward. I thought it was weird to see Ellis fail in the lights. His Gordon's fisherman is mad at Saved by the Bell, the new class comment.
I got it.
I laughed, but I didn't like that I was laughing. I just thought it was, I guess I might not have heard what brought it on. I thought it was so random, and everyone there looked at him like, what the hell are you talking about? And I just thought that was a weird dynamic to see, because usually I support what Ellis is saying, but I'm glad that you got it, though, at least, right?
I dug it.
Oh, another thing that I wrote down that I thought was hilarious was returning from Cobster's break. Christian said, oh, that was a long break. And it's even funnier because Christian called me out when he was on Schmoeville podcast. He called me out for giving Cobster's break shit. So I thought it was great that he had that little dig in there. We talked about toughness, explaining the new Schmoecast member. The Ellis wants abs, going back and forth, all that. Christian giving him a hard time about his iced tea. I thought all of that was hilarious. And I love that they are continuing to cut to JTE, and it's just like him shaking his head at what they're talking about. I love that.
And his obsession with abs reminds me a great deal of Johnny Drama's obsession with calves. It's a very similar obsession. Or fetish.
Which is funny because Ellis claims that he's a pretty fit guy, but if you watch that Central Intelligence promo they had at the end, it looked like he didn't even know how to do push-ups. So I'll reserve my judgment until I see the full clip. And I didn't get to see the full clip because for whatever reason, the live stream cuts off everything every week. So I didn't get to finish that out. But anyway, I found that very interesting. I loved Christian's dig at Schnepp for leaving in ice cream from 1987. I would love to hear the actual behind-the-scenes story as to what's going on with Schnepp's ice cream.
When things were so bad, they had to buy their own fridge for the office because they couldn't take it anymore.
That must be a nut house to be with all those people in that one small space. And, you got a little bit of it earlier this year when we heard about Ellis's awful mess with his clothes and everything being thrown everywhere. So that, for neat freaks, and I think Christian might be a little bit of a neat freak. I'm not sure though, but if there's people in there that are neat freaks, it's got to be a nightmare sometimes to live.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't think there's a sink in that office. So I think that's part of the reason why they always complain about the smells, and I'm pretty sure there's no running water in that place.
Oh, I don't have any idea. There's got to be a bathroom though.
Well, there's a bathroom somewhere on the property, but I'm pretty sure that there is no sink in the office. They've talked about this before.
They've got the urinal, the one that they were gonna lick. So let me ask Christian tomorrow about the plumbing situation over there, and we'll get the rundown on that next week.
Did you see Sasha reference how there's no Wi-Fi in one of these episodes? Maybe it was Top 10 or TV Talk.
That makes zero sense.
But Campia went on this lengthy explanation many, many months ago how they finally did get it.
It doesn't even make sense. How do you record the show without Wi-Fi? What the hell are they talking about?
Well, it was too expensive to put it in before because they had their office was like a dead zone for the longest time. So they used these like adapter boxes that weren't actual Wi-Fi, but something else. But then supposedly Complex helped them get real Wi-Fi in that place or something to that effect. And yet it sounds like they still don't have it for everybody. I don't know. Something's up with their plumbing and their internet connection.
Anyway, the final quote of the night, which happened to be my favorite, was Finstock opening the bag on his head and instantly locking eyes with with Perry saying, "Oh, who's that new girl?"
Yeah.
That was easily my favorite moment of the night. 'Cause that's what I love. I mentioned it before. I love when Finstock says the stuff into his mic and everyone else is talking over him, but he gets like these really quick, funny jokes in, and I love it. So, but anyway, that was the only thing Finstock did. That was the only thing that Finstock did that was great.
Classic Finstock, Johnny Mumbles, getting something in there quick. Perry was flattered. You could tell that she was awaiting that first moment where Finstock kind of flirts with her in good fun. So she's been...
Well, who wouldn't be flattered if you've got Bobby Finstock, Tom Dagnino checking you out? I mean, I'd be flattered. I'd be tickled to death, you know?
That was her orientation into Finstock you.
I think that's my final word on the week in Schmoes, the week in Collider. Do you have anything else before we sign off here?
I'm all good, man.
All right. Well, where can the people find you, Brian?
You guys can follow me, Brian Davids, on Twitter at BDF331. Check out my TV film podcast at Film Schlubs. Check out all of our old episodes at filmschlubspodcast.com. We talk TV, movies, and I interview people like Melissa Bernstein, the executive producer of Breaking Bad, Better Call Saul, Halt and Catch Fire, and Rectify. So that is that.
Awesome. I love it. You can find me on Twitter at WhatUpSnell, Snow with 2 L's. And I love talking to everyone on Twitter throughout the week. Thank you to everyone who comments in the YouTube page. We greatly appreciate it. We have a lot of fun doing that. But anyway, until next week, I'm Ryan Snelling.
And I'm Brian Davids.
Thank you so much for listening. We will see you next time.